The Powers Project.
Eric, how are you today, sir?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing great. It's good to have you on the show. Um, I've been looking for someone to, with your expertise for quite some time to talk about, the various topics that obviously you're an expert in. You were on the LAPD force for 20 years, right?
I was on LAPD for a little over 5, and then I came down to Orange County, California, so just a little bit further south. But I
Oh,
did a
okay.
total of 20 years.
20 years.
And
Very cool. And so when you were on LAPD, what were the time periods there? Like what happened that everybody would go, oh, he was on the force during this, like the OJ trials or something like that, or were you?
no, so I started in October '95, and so the biggest thing that occurred while I was there was the North Hollywood shooting, where the two
Oh,
bank robbers were in body armor, um, and then the Rampart scandal, where I don't know if you've seen the movie Training Day. I believe that's kind of or it's loosely based on that, and then the Shield TV show is kind of based on that. But it was a big corruption scandal that involving the gang unit in Rampart that caused a lot of stir and lawsuits and all that crazy stuff.
oh. Okay. So yeah, so the Shield had Denzel, or I mean, Training Day had Denzel Washington, right?
Yeah,
And then the Shield was with Michael Chiklis, if I
that's
remember
right.
correctly. Yeah, so yeah, good show too. And it
Mhm.
seemed like it just stopped abruptly. I don't know what happened to it, but I enjoyed the show. So
It was great. Yeah, both those, the movie and the show was pretty good.
yeah, it really was. So after your 20 years in law enforcement, then and what you do now today is private investigation, which you've been doing for over 8 years now. You have your own private investigation firm. So what I'd like to do is I want to talk to you about your time in law enforcement is and how that compares to what you're doing now in private investigation, why you transitioned over to private investigations and things of that nature, the pros and cons of both, because I'm sure they both have pros and they both have cons. But I really wanted to pick your brain at the beginning of the show here and talk about your since you were in, you know as a police officer for 20 years, you have a special insight, I think, that most people don't have. And so I'd like to go, what are you what are your impressions on police forces across the country and the way that they police, um, you know, the civilians, if you will, the in the manner in which they do things. Did you see things that made you cringe when you were on the force, and what keeps good cops from turning in bad cops and things of that nature? So I wanted to kind of start there and just pick your brain and see what your feelings were on those things. So um, let's start with the police departments militarizing themselves. What are your impressions on that? Like, is that something that you feel is really necessary, or?
I think certain equipment is necessary, and I mentioned the North Hollywood shooting. And so, to give an example, in LAPD, the academy was about 6 months, and and there was a lot of training, and I believe nationwide there's certain departments, LAPD, LA County, and maybe some departments on the East Coast. I don't know too much about New York, but I think maybe some other departments are very big on training. So in LA, it's very diverse, culturally diverse. There's so many um, melting. It's a melting pot of different cultures and ethnicities, and so the training, we got a lot of Spanish, community relations, and a lot of tactics. But to answer your question regarding equipment, they had, like I mentioned, the North Hollywood shooting. Well, the officers were under equipped, so they rolled up in Chevy Caprices with no ballistic doors, we'll say, and so bullets go through doors.
Right.
An engine will stop a bullet but these guys had in North Hollywood had high-powered rifles, and so they were just terrorizing the entire neighborhood. And come to find out, well, the police officers that responded to that scene, I was actually I was on call for court that day, and the guy I was talking to the court liaison person. He said, "Turn on your TV," and I saw it live like a lot of people, and we had 9mm Berettas at that time, and I think you didn't have the option to buy a 45, and so that's what we were issued, and it's a great gun. We had Ithaca shotguns, so not a slug shotgun, so it would be buckshot. So they were very they didn't have the right amount of equipment to go after those particular guys and save the community. And SWAT rolled in, and they had their equipment. And one of the guys had like gym shorts on because he was working out at the time, and they had their rifles. And they had to skip one of them had to skip some rounds off the concrete from the rifle to kill the guy, shoot him in the leg or something, or to injure him or whatever happened at that time. And I believe some officers went to a gun store to get rifles, because obviously rifles have more high-powered bullets, more velocity. So, and come to find out, there was a petition or maybe a memo on the chief's desk at that time to approve rifles and slug shotguns, and probably the next day those got approved, because the crooks don't play by the same rules. So in terms of militarizing police departments, I think it's a catch-22. I think for some situations you need it. In California, specifically Southern California, which I have experience in, some departments have a thing called a Bearcat. So essentially it's a big transport vehicle that if you have a situation, which we have a lot of, pursuits, end of pursuits, barricaded suspects, that's the best thing to do. And in SWAT, I've been on SWAT callouts where typically they want to shoot gas into the house and have the guy come out. We actually had one where we were doing a search warrant to arrest a gang member in South LA, and we got information that the guy had an AK-47. He was in a basement. He was going to try and kill all of us. And so it became a SWAT call out. So we retreated, and SWAT came there. They threw gas in, and he came out crying like a baby. So, so certain units, certain things need that. I think on the flip side, you've got these, we'll call them tackleberry type individuals. If you've ever seen Police Academy,
Yes.
who maybe they watch the movie SWAT, and then they want to come home and they tell their wife and kids that, yeah, that's what I do, and truly they don't. The those types of guys, they'll brag about the 6 stories that they've had in their law enforcement career. They've never been in a shooting or seen a shooting because they wouldn't talk about stuff like the way they do. So you have those individuals. So I think some of that equipment is necessary, but in the right hands with the right procedures and policies, and take it out when you need it. And you have to have good supervision as it relates to that, and don't let people take advantage of that. And then the right training, because a lot of times, and we'll probably get into this as well, the departments don't have proper training. Fortunately, we had a lot of good training at the LAPD Academy. People are talking about the George Floyd incident and things like that, and jiu-jitsu gets brought up. We were taught that in '95 by the Gracies. They came in and they did the academy. I used the techniques that they taught. So it just comes down to perspective. But some of those equipment, that equipment is necessary.
So okay, so I've got a couple questions in mind I want to ask you. So let me ask you this one first. One of the things that has taken place over the past several years, of course, is that you have these military guys who come back from places like Afghanistan and stuff, and so they get out of the military, and it's a pretty natural fit to go into the police department. So you have these guys who are trained soldiers, and they're used to being part of these occupied forces and dealing with them, and on a where it's a shoot to kill type thing, and they come into a police force which is supposed to be, helping civilians and protecting the community, and yet they come in with this same mindset of, this is the combatant, this is this is our enemy, and we need to make sure that we stay safe. So they treat it almost as if they're in a battlefield situation. And do you find that to be like, when they're going through training, do you think that maybe if training was more about de-escalation and realizing, and not be so much fear-based? Because that's what I want to ask you. Where does that fear-based training come from? Does that come from the academy, or is that after the fact, where you have the police department there where they're saying, look, every one of us are going to go home and we're going to make sure that we're safe, and that should be a priority. But I don't think it should be a priority at the expense where civilians are killed because a cop was too scared about what was going to happen to them and killed an innocent person by accident or whatever because they were scared. I know I just asked a slew of questions that kind of didn't mesh up together, but if you can make sense of what I just said, if not, I'll go back over one at a time.
Well, I'm an investigator, so I listen to people. So let me break down the first thing you said. You talked about military people coming back out of potentially combat. So as you know, there's multiple branches of the military. So somebody in the Air Force that maybe had a certain job is going to have a different mentality and experience than maybe somebody in the Marines that potentially was on the front lines. So I understand what you're saying. However, in police departments across the country, there's a standard of background investigations, and we do those. So in California, it's called Peace Officer Standards and Training. So there's a series of sections that addresses everything, and you get their military records and things like that. Some of the military people are some of the best police officers. So I think it comes down to the individual. I can't think of a particular case where, and I'm sure there are some, but I don't know what specific case you're talking about in terms of maybe like a military person going rogue as a police officer. But I think you talked about fear-based. So I think you've got one extreme where, okay, I'll take LA for example. I worked in East LA. They told us in roll call one night, don't go to this particular area because the gangsters have a hit out on you, and you have to have two police officer response and an airship, which is a helicopter. So if that isn't a war zone, I don't know what is, when people are shooting from the rooftops to kill officers. And then I grew up in Chicago. My dad retired from Chicago PD. My uncle did. My brother's still on Chicago PD. They throw refrigerators out at the police from the projects to try to
Okay,
kill the police.
I can't stop you just for a second because I want to
Sure,
ask you something. So,
sure.
so you make a great point. That some of these places are like combat zones.
Hmm.
So, how do you take an officer who's been privy to that sort of environment and part of that, and take them out and then kind of put them in, you know, regular situations where it's not like that, and it's sort of like, I don't know if you can take someone from who had to deal with that kind of violence and put them in, a suburb somewhere where the worst thing
Sure,
that's going to
sure.
happen is a soccer mom, gets mad about a parking situation or something.
I completely agree. Yeah, because 90+% of what you're dealing with is that public interaction. So to answer your question, so it starts with the background investigation. People go through a psychological evaluation and medical, and that want to get on the job, and then you have a training program. So you could have the smartest guy in the world, the best person or woman, and they may not make it through the training program, even though it costs them thousands of dollars to hire this person. So you should have a lot of checks and balances in a police department to prevent, I guess what you're getting at is maybe somebody going crazy, on a traffic stop, or talking to, you know, somebody on a noise complaint. So, yeah, there should be a lot of checks and balances. I think where police departments miss the mark is situational awareness, talking, the mutual respect, and because sometimes police can talk themselves into a fight or a lawsuit or something like that because of their attitude, but that should have been recognized early in the hiring process, throughout the process. But yeah, some things can't be prevented, but um, yeah, so I agree with you. The majority of the time is going to be the customer service, which in my was proud of my interactions with the public, and you know people thank me for being the way I was in their difficult situations. So I think it's just you got to reinforce that, and you would hope that that's part of the training process throughout the country.
Well, I think one of the things I noticed, and I was an MP in the military, in the army, and I can recall having gone to situations where I could have very easily drawn my weapon. But one of the things that I was always aware of is I didn't want to escalate something, especially to that point when I didn't need to, because most times, in fact, every time I was there, I was thinking, yeah, if it starts to escalate, I'll think about it. But normally you can talk a person down if you want to. If you don't go in there acting like you're John Wayne and you're going to bark orders and people are going to follow you. And that's what I
Uh-huh.
see a lot of policing today, is that they just bark out orders and expect people, and people get indignant with that because they're like, why are you talking to me this way?
Yeah,
And I see it in a lot of the younger cops. Not that the older ones don't do it as well. So I don't want to just place all the blame on one particular age group. Um, and I think, God, you could say, like you just saying, you could, situational, you know be aware of your situation, what's going on. You don't need to talk to people that way. You don't need to act like you're John Wayne and everyone's going to just listen to what you say, because that's not the way to interact with normal human beings. Now I understand, like what you were saying before, when you're in a combat zone, you pretty much have to be that way. But be aware of the situation you're in, and act accordingly. And I don't see a lot of that in many of the police departments across the country.
yeah, and I don't, you never know if that's a recent thing, because I think that police are on the defensive in terms of the defunding and the filming and all of this stuff, which you know the filming should is a good thing, but I think there's maybe a an overall lack of respect for police and maybe communities. Some of it has already been there. Um, and I think that some communities don't want police there for one reason or another. But yeah, I think it mostly comes to insecurity. There's a particular department in Orange County that they have a lot of highly educated people, and some of them have master's degrees and all of this stuff, and they're patrol officers. And I've seen them interact, and they're good, but maybe they don't know how to talk to people. Yeah, I think it comes down to common sense, and not only that situational awareness, but hey, maybe they've dealt with something like this before. So maybe scenario based training. Hey, if this happens, this is how it'd be great if you responded this way. But I saw a video recently where I think some Arizona officers went to go rescue somebody that was maybe domestic violence, but essentially it was a fake call, and then the guy at the door just started shooting at him. So I think certain things that happen maybe cause officers to maybe be a little bit more on the edge recently. But yeah, I mean, it's all about talking. And like I said, my dad was in law enforcement since the 70s, and he was like that. He had a great personality, and he talked to people, and he treated everybody with respect, except if they worked for him, and they were lazy. But but you're right. It just boils down to that. And think about it. In every business, we can go into a gas station, into a
Right.
hotel, and for me, I'm automatically analyzing everything like I'm a mystery shopper, because that's just what I do. And maybe I'd say, well, if you go to a Starbucks or a restaurant or whatever, you, okay, this is good. This person is good. They're passionate. They're caring about their job, and they love what they do. So not it covers every work environment and every place you do. And there's always that excuse that sometimes they say, oh, well, he's having a bad day. Doesn't make a difference. Most people can
Right.
have a bad day, in especially in that field.
Yeah, I agree. There's a couple things I think that could help, and I'd like to get your point of view on it. I think that one, I really don't think we should hire anybody under 25. I go, look, their frontal lobe hasn't even completely developed yet. And I've known too many, because again, I was, a lot of my friends were cops, even, and stuff. And I know, and I remember how some of the younger ones would act. And, like I remember being on the beach one day, and where we can drive on the beach where I'm at, and this car went by us, and we were talking to the cop, and there was a few of us hanging around because we all knew each other. And the guy who was a friend, who was the cop, he waited till the car got a good 100 yards in front of him, because he said, watch this. He just wanted to turn his lights on and speed down the beach and give himself an excuse to look, so all the girls could look at him. And I go, that's not what that's not what policing's about. But for him, he's a young guy, he's trying to show off, and that's exactly what it was to him. And I was like, we really should probably up the age as far as who can be a police officer. And the other thing I think might help is, like, we look at countries like Germany, for instance, which, it's a 2-year process. You go to school for 2 years before you ever, are put out on the streets, because I think a lot of the problems could be solved with the relationship between that rift that we have between, the community and the police department, is by better training. Train people to focus more on de-escalating the situation rather than escalating it. And I think what would happen is you get rid of a lot of these John Waynes who would fall out before they ever made it to the 2 years, and also teach them about the law. Because I find that one of the things that people get really upset about is that police officers are able to get away with things that you and I would not be able to get away with. If I interfere with somebody's rights, if I were to touch somebody, if I were to walk up on somebody and get right in their face, or if I did that to a police officer, I would be arrested. But they do all those things. They don't even need to know the law. They can violate your rights, and it's okay, because they have qualified immunity, which I think, I don't know how you feel about it, but I think maybe we should probably get rid of that. And that will make them think twice before they start violating people's rights, either because they know that they're violating them and don't care, or because they're just not educated and don't know they're violating rights. So what do you think?
About which point?
About
So you started.
the schooling, about the age, and yeah, sorry about
Yeah.
that.
So yeah, no worries. No, it's all good. So you talked about 25 and years old to start. I actually started when I was 20. I took the test at 21. Took the test at 20, and I agree. In terms of life experience, I learned on the job and as I went, and luckily I had good mentorship from my dad and people along the way. I think police departments, especially nowadays, are having a hard time hiring people. And when you're driving on the freeway over here and you see billboards of them offering signing bonuses to be a policeman, then you know that they're really having a hard time hiring people, because, as you know, there's pensions. And as soon as somebody hits 50 or 55 or whatever the case may be in their particular area, they're gone. So they may have 5 people leave in a year, and they've got to hire for that. So I agree with you. There should be a certain age, maturity level, and things like that. And then what was the other stuff you asked or talked about?
About training, revamping the training. Like, should we make it longer than 6 months? Should we maybe go at least a year or 2 years and weed out some of these bad, guys who we know over time they're going to fall out, because it's not the job they thought it was going to be, like
Yeah,
kick ass, like what do they say, bang heads and kick ass, or whatever it is,
kick ass and take names. Yeah.
there you go. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So if somebody's a jerk in high school, potentially they're gonna be a jerk in college, and potentially they'll be a jerk as a police officer, and um, maybe they can mask that during the processes. Maybe they can um, maybe they know somebody that at that department, and they get taken under their wing. So I think you're always going to have those jerks, which I've worked around a good amount of them, and so I think you're always going to have that. I think police work attracts certain individuals, and um, whether they're well educated or speak well, but behind the scenes they're stabbing people in the back. So I think that it's going to be hard. And I think that when you look at a job like that, as opposed to what I do now, y- your standard in certain cities is just to show up. I mean, there are people that do next to nothing. One guy told me a ticket a day will keep the sergeant away. That's your standard, huh? Okay. You're not going to look at the crime stats in your area. You're not going to do extra patrols, talk to people in the community, develop people that are, that will give you information. Okay. So I think that, and the person that makes 10 arrests a month, legitimate arrests a month, versus somebody that writes the ticket a day or does next to nothing, is going to get paid the same. And they need those bodies, and that police department needs those people to work those areas, to respond to those calls for service. So I think, getting back to your point, yes, training is number one. And I think because of incidents that happened in the past couple of years, you see private companies conducting training, and you see maybe some more distrust in the police. And then you see, I think, with technology and the opportunities, I have a friend who has a business in Costa Mesa, and they are training police officers, and essentially they have firearms and de-escalation. And a civilian who owns a security company used it in a no shooting situation, and it worked. And he actually called me, the guy who owns the company, and said, "Hey, the training works." And so you have private companies that are going to do that. And you also, I don't know what's going on in the area that you live, but you have people with concealed carry out here in certain areas. And there's been shootings that are occurring, where people are breaking into homes and things like that, because crime is a little bit out of control in certain areas. And you have people realizing that it's going to take, a long time for the police to respond. I have a surveillance agent friend who was on a surveillance, and he got stabbed with a samurai sword. It took by the suspect. It took 20 minutes for the ambulance to get there, and had they not had military training or tourniquet training, he would have died potentially. So you got to take things into your own hands as citizens, in my opinion, and try to prevent crime and protect yourself and your family. But getting back to the police aspect of it, yeah, I think training is going to be there, but let's face it, it always comes down to budget.
So how much, all right, because, so it sounds like that because there's a shortage of people who are willing to be police officers, that not only is it difficult, and you're pretty much hiring whoever you can get your hands on that doesn't have a criminal background already. On top of that, you have these police unions that are so strong, and that can keep bad cops in the system when they should have been fired. And so a lot of times police departments, even when they fire somebody, will let them resign rather than fire them, because they don't want to have to deal with the litigation of it all. And but I would think that cities across the country would find it much cheaper to have a continuing education system set up for their police departments, because it would cause a lot less lawsuits than what we're seeing nowadays, that cities are getting hit with one lawsuit after another because of bad cops out there who are violating people's rights, and just going off the hinges sometimes.
Yeah, I think there are some legit lawsuits against police. There's some not so legit lawsuits against police. To give you an example, at LAPD, were before body cameras in '96, this motor officer that I worked around when I was in detectives, he said he was a subject of a false complaint. And back then we had to, in a big city, you've got to pay for your own phone at that time, pager. And LAPD was encouraging we purchase our own recording devices to protect ourselves. And this woman made a false accusation against this motor officer because apparently she, maybe didn't want a ticket and also wanted to, go against him, and then maybe wanted to make some money off of it. So she made a false complaint that he sexually harassed her or touched her or did something or said something. And he recorded the entire encounter. I don't know if he countersued her because I think he certainly had that opportunity, but that definitely shot down the allegation from her. So yeah, in terms of, I've got a couple stories regarding that. I'm doing a background on a person right now seeking a job in a law enforcement agency. And he told the chief of the department, he says, "Hey, I'm thinking about leaving. I'm just letting you know I applied for this agency." And he's not at retirement age. He's pretty young in his career. And the chief said, "Hey, great, I'll support you however you want." Guy's never had a complaint in his career. A week later, a commander that doesn't like him lodged a complaint against him. He doesn't know what it's for, but I think it's maybe something he didn't report, or it's something minor. So it's clearly potentially a retaliation thing. And then I have a lot of attorneys that do civil cases where officers are falsely accused and falsely terminated, and that happens. And whether it's because they're a whistleblower or maybe they didn't fit into the high school jock mentality, and because there's different groups, as you know, within police departments,
Mhm.
kind of like the military. And so there's a lot of things that happen. So to answer your point, yeah, training helps. Constant better supervision, I think it always starts with the top, but then you get politics involved, and you get mayors and city council and all of that stuff. And hey, we don't want to look bad, so let's get rid of this person, let's get rid of that. And the chiefs had probably an at will, and the sheriff, well, I don't know about the sheriff's elected, but chiefs typically are at will, so they can get rid of those guys or women at any time. And so they're going to do whatever they say.
Well, I agree with you. Because I don't think there can be bad police officers in a department unless the head of the police department or the sheriff or the chief allow it to happen for the most part, And again, I've heard them say, "Well, the unions have our hands tied," but it's my understanding that the chief doesn't have to sign off on that. There's two signatures: the person that represents the union and the chief. And if the chief doesn't like it, then he doesn't have to sign off, or the sheriff doesn't have to sign off on it. So, I don't know why they would. If they didn't like something that was in the agreement, why they would sign off on it, and they would go, "Yeah, we're not doing that. We're not going to allow, bad police officers to be able to continue to go from one department to the next and next, and you can't ever get rid of them." So,
Yeah, yeah, like I said, there's times where in the hiring process, sometimes it's recognized that certain departments are a certain way and they have a certain culture, and maybe they're known for um, treating officers a certain way. Or I think that in terms of the unions, and you're talking about lawsuits and being protected, I think in any sort of job, each state obviously is different with respect to labor laws. But when you talk about unions, they fight for their employees and benefits, and hopefully it's on par with other departments so they can attract new employees and officers. And I don't think unions are shielding people these days from getting indicted, arrested, put in jail. I think that there's the pendulum constantly swings between whether it's Chicago or other cities where they're going to make an example out of an officer, even if maybe years ago they wouldn't have done anything, but they're going to say, well, it must have been. So there's tunnel vision, in my opinion, with politics and politicians, because they want to make sure that they're tough on the bad apple officers.
Mhm.
And so in terms, if an officer, but think about it, if an officer gets in a shooting and it's righteous, it gets investigated as a homicide. So that officer is, you know, for lack of a better term, kind of accused of that until the investigation reveals that it isn't. Even though, you know, there's video, there's a gun, there's a gun being pointed at an officer. Um, you know, there's still a lot of angles and things that, you know, get looked at, that the Monday morning quarterbacks, you know, don't have the experience or knowledge to see. So I think we've gotten a point in society where, you know, there's no, you know, protection in certain scenarios, if you think about it. And I think there's been several cases in the past couple of years that have proven that. And I think there's a different dynamic to each city. You know, you have different, you know, Chicago's going to be different than Florida, and it's going to be different than California. But I think, getting back to your point, nationwide, you should have the same amount of training. Why is it that the tactics training in LA is different than Minnesota? Why is it that there's like an in custody death on the East Coast you know, somebody being transported, where if they use the tactics from, you know, the Midwest or the West Coast, why can't we all be on the same page in terms of learning the best practices? Because nobody's in competition in police, so it's not like, you know, Coke versus Pepsi.
Right. You would think that you're right. You would think that all the departments would want to get together and go, these are the best tactics to use. We should use these nationwide. And if one's proven better than the other, then let's use the best one. I think, you know, to your point, you know, I see like the rift that I see between the communities, or, you know, and that police officers serve, and the police departments. I blame most of it on the police departments, on the police. And it's because there's, you know, as you know, before cameras came around on phones, there was a lot of this going on beforehand. But if you didn't have any interaction with police, you weren't aware of that. And now it's just coming to light. And a lot of this bad behavior has been going on for decades and decades. And it's just catching on now because everyone has a camera phone. And I think it's incumbent upon the police departments to take the lead with this, to repair that rift between their communities and themselves. And I think a good way they can do that is through transparency. I think the cameras that they have on them, I think, seriously, I don't know how, you know, all these cops who turn their cameras off or turn their mics off, I think they should be fired immediately. I go, look, you know, you have no right to privacy. There's no reason that you can't say whatever you need to say on camera and have that camera on the whole time. Because now I'm going, what is it that you're hiding? Because you are hiding something, obviously. Otherwise, you wouldn't have shut it off. And so I think if they're transparent in using cameras, if they're transparent when an officer is brought, you know, when a complaint's filed on the officer, that the department's transparent and going, this is what we found. This is why we found the officer innocent or not, or guilty or whatever. And this is the punishment that officer's getting. But instead, they hide all this stuff from the public. So the public's going to continually suspect the department of not doing their job properly, and they're policing each other and just buddy buddy, and nothing's ever going to be done about it. So I think the more transparent they are, the more trusting the society, you know, the community will become of that department as they see, oh, okay, we know what's going on. Because I think, like you said, a lot of these Monday morning quarterbacks, or if you will, they don't really know what's going on. But part of it is because it's hidden from them. So, you know, I think that might help as well.
I agree. I don't know what's going on out where you are, but in LAPD and the surrounding areas in California and Southern California, if there's a shooting, typically they'll have a captain or like a media relations person, and you can look this up on YouTube, and I'll send you some. But basically, they'll dissect the shooting. They'll say, this is what happened at this particular day and time. Officers responded to the Wilshire area for man with a gun. They arrived. The guy with the gun turned at him, pointed at them. They shot him. Here's the gun on the ground. Here's the guy. The person was taken to the hospital. They survived, and we and this case is closed, whatever they say. So if that isn't transparency, I don't know what is. I think it's a phenomenal thing of what they're doing. You mentioned something about, something that an officer did. I think that, you know, um, there's certain levels of things that officers can do, I guess, that um, and maybe you got to look at the intent, you got to look at their ethics, their morals. Was it illegal? If it's illegal, then yeah, the person should get fired and they'll get arrested for a crime, and that's happened. And that's what happened in the Rampart scandal in the 90s that I mentioned to you. um, there was a group of officers that were going rogue, and some of them got arrested. There were a lot of lawsuits, but also I think they also did a wide net, and they included officers that didn't do anything. And then later on, those officers turned around and sued, and they became millionaires because they were falsely accused. So I agree with your transparency comment, but I think that we can't be too quick to judge. If you see something on the news, or when you Google, or in a 2-second video, you don't know the entire story. So
Right.
in terms of transparency, I think a lot of departments are doing a great job, at least the Southern California ones, where this is what happened, this is how it happened. And a lot of you in an investigation, you're not going to have everything 2 seconds after it. But when somebody takes a cell phone video, you'll have it 2 seconds. It will be uploaded 2 seconds after it occurs. And everybody you were in the military police, so you know tactics and training and how to deal with people. But everybody that has an opinion will give an opinion on something that they've never had any experience involved in. So,
Right.
if you show me a video of an MP doing something, well, I don't know your tactics and training and what your procedures are. I'm not going to give an opinion. I'm going to ask you. So, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you on the transparency front. When it's sometimes it just can't be as immediate as people want.
Right. And I agree. And I think that there should be some, time allotted so that a real investigation can be done. I think what else would happen is that it would stop these opportunists who want to blame, because, if something happens, there's like a George Floyd incident. And then all of a sudden, cops across the country are facing people going, "Oh, you're trying to kill me. You're trying to hurt me." And blowing it out of proportion because of this one event that took place. And now cops across the country are dealing with every person like that, claiming that the police are trying to kill them, even, and it's ridiculous. So I think having transparency helps the community and helps the police officers as well. As long as they're doing their job right, I think they would welcome that, so.
I agree, and I think it's being done on a lot of levels that people don't see. So I have a friend that I worked with in the gang unit, and he is a community relations officer, and he is doing a phenomenal job um, with the community and talking to the community, and just getting in good with the kids and educating kids, teens, maybe adults. Hey, if you get stopped, this is, just make sure your hands are there and in front. And if I get pulled over by police, I still get nervous, even though I have a lot of experience. Nobody wants that. It's a nerve-wracking experience, and it's just not natural. And I think that um, there's people like my buddy that are doing some good stuff in the community that not too many people see. And then I have another person that worked Watts that was pretty high up in LAPD that was extremely involved in the community and did a great job. And it doesn't completely stop crime, but it educates, because a lot of things could have been prevented, whether it's George Floyd, or there was a guy on the East Coast, I think he was selling like cigarettes or
Cigarettes,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, but listen, we can take the approach, hey, do me a favor, man, sit down. And I believe I did see video of the beginning of the confrontation with Mr. Floyd, but hey, man, come out of the car, let's talk about this. We just need to square this up. This guy called, apparently the bill that you gave or whatever situation. Can we just sit down and talk about this? maybe had he had that community training or whatever, perhaps oh, you know what, no problem. And you know, maybe just not. I think there's both sides to that.
Right.
I don't think the police are there to parent people, because that's what you have parents for. And so, but sometimes people need to be told what to do. And that particular instance, what a very minor crime, the one with the cigarettes as well, both of those crimes, but the cigarettes and that, but that guy was a huge guy, and they're just going off of, you can have all the training in the world, but if somebody's high on PCP or something happens, somebody has a weapon, you're not, the police are responding to something. They don't have that plan. So if somebody
Right.
wants to ambush, or if somebody wants to go, okay, shoot, the police are contacting me, I'm going to use this, pipe, and I'm going to hit this guy and do this. And so they're just responding. So, obviously you want that high level of training and tactics and communication, but some people just won't listen.
I think something that could have helped both of those situations, and I want to say that guy's name, if I'm correct, I want to say his name was Michael Brown or Brown.
Yeah.
So, in both of those situations, what I saw is that the police had gotten control of the situation, or the control of each man. But instead of de-escalating at that point, once you have them in cuffs, set them up. You don't need to put your knee on someone's neck for that long. There's just no, I mean, at that point, you're proving a point, and there's just no need for that. You've got him subdued, and you can under control. So just set him up. And I think this is one of the mistakes that a lot of cops, they get upset because you challenged them. And so they don't take when someone starts complaining, they, because I'm sure they run into this all the time, where someone's like, I can't breathe, and they use that excuse, and the cops are like, I've heard that a million times, and so they don't take it seriously. And I think even if people are lying, you have to take it seriously each time, because if you don't, um it may end up with someone dead. And I wouldn't want to take that risk. I think also I've seen where they throw people in the back of their car, and there's not enough AC getting back there, and some of these guys who are extremely overweight, like they're going, they're panicking because they really can't breathe. And it's, maybe normal humans could in that situation, but these people are out of shape, and they're excited, and their heart's racing and everything, and next thing you know, they have a heart attack. And then
Yeah.
because the cops didn't take them seriously, I go, look, I'd rather be safe than sorry. It's like, take him out until you're ready to transport him. You don't have to sit him in the car. If he really is having a hard time breathing, he's in cuffs, he's not going anywhere. So I think just, err on the side of caution, I guess, is what I would say would be a big help.
Yeah, and I think that, that knee to the neck has never been a tactic I've ever observed, I've ever used. It's just not done.
Right.
Usually it's a need to, like, the upper back if you want to comply, gain compliance to handcuff. But once you got that person on the ground, and then there's been those cases where people are hogtied, and then they die because maybe they're under the influence of a particular drug or whatever. So you got to have that recognized. I think sometimes those scenes can get chaotic, and people don't realize how chaotic they can be. And I think it's incumbent upon senior officers or the supervisors to maybe pull those people back, remove them from the situation. The ones that you said, contempt of cop type of thing, where
Right.
they're upset. Hey, you defied me. You went against the badge. You went against society. You went against everything I stand for, and now I'm gonna, put my knee to your neck, or, do all these extreme things. So I think it's incumbent upon, people to get out there and go, all right, guys, remove yourself. Maybe get a fresh set of officers in there to transport this person, get the ambulance there, get them out of there, because as you've seen with videos, the scenes become chaotic, and then that just adds to some of maybe the anger of the officers and the emotions.
Right. Exactly. I will say this, and this is something that I don't think the majority of people understand, is that even your average beat cop, You know, the things that he sees or she sees on a daily basis. You know, I can see Mr. and Mrs. Smith holding hands and walking down the street and wave to him going, "Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Smith," and think they're just the most loveliest couple in the world. And yet, you know, my neighbor who might be a police officer sees Mr. and Mrs. Smith and remembers 2 nights ago when he had to go to a domestic disturbance when Mr. Smith was beating the hell out of Mrs. Smith. And so he sees something different than I see. And, you know, and there's no way that I'm aware of that you can separate that, you know, like you can't unsee what you've seen. And so police officers often see the worst of people, and because it's their job, that's when they're called, is when people are not, you know, on their best behavior. And so, and I know that they even affects their own relationships, you know, throughout their lives. You know, you see a woman cheating on her husband, you start wondering, is my wife cheating on me? You know, that sort of thing. And so I think that's something else too, where along with the training, I think that they should have a mental evaluation where they have help. And I know that there's help there, but almost where you have to, because you know, men in particular, we're not going to any. It's like, I got this, you know, don't worry about it. sort of attitude. When actually it would be very helpful to talk to a mental health expert and to, you know, let these things out.
Yeah, and some departments have, and I was involved with one of them, have created trauma support teams. And so if they, you know, maybe if somebody goes to a fatal accident and sees certain things or shooting or whatever, and there are systems set up throughout the country when people go through those events. But I completely agree. It should be, you know, maybe some continuous checking in, because oftentimes, as you know, in the military or police, mostly you're hanging out with those types of people and talking about the same stories, and people are drinking a lot, and you know it certainly doesn't help. So I think those outlets are certainly needed. And yeah, I mean, you get jaded and all you're dealing with potentially is negativity and people
Yeah.
not liking you.
And yeah, and I don't think most people understand that, because unless you've gone through it yourself, you don't and that's the heart, and that's the thing, you know, which was the point you made earlier. You know, Joe Q citizen out there has no idea what it means to be a police officer. They don't know what it entails. They don't know what police officers go through. And so it's very easy to criticize them or judge them. You know, and that's not to say again that there aren't things that cops do that are wrong on purpose, but a lot of the things that they do is because of what they've had to encounter throughout, you know, the weeks, the months, the years that they've been on the force, and the things that they've seen. And so, you know, I don't think people can appreciate that. I will say this, is that some of the tactics that uh, and you may have used them yourself. I was looking at these, and I didn't really go over to say, did I ever use these things? But as I read them off to you, I'll say if that these tactics need to be done away with. And because here's why: there's, as long as police officers continue to use these tactics, there'll never be any trust between them and the community. And so here's what I wrote down. There's a double standard. So police can lie, but you can't. You're not allowed to lie to the police. You don't need to know the law, but we do. If you give me a ticket or you arrest me for a law that I'm unaware of, and I go before the judge and go, I didn't know that was law, they go, well, that's ignorance of the law is no excuse. But police officers can use that all the time. They didn't know they were violating my First Amendment rights or my Second Amendment rights or my Fourth or Fifth Amendment rights. They had no idea about that. You know, and they get away with that. And I don't see how someone who is a paid professional, who's law enforcement, you are law enforcement, but you don't know the law that you're enforcing. So, and yet I'm supposed to know the law as an average citizen, and that just doesn't make any sense to me. Um, Again, police officers can step right up into your face and get this close to you, and if you push them back, that's battery. But if you get up in their face, you get arrested, because now you know, they're saying for officer safety. And I'm thinking, well, what about citizen safety? You know, You just because you're a police officer doesn't mean I necessarily like if you're that aggressive, why would I trust you regardless of what your profession is? Um, Again, police officers constantly commit battery. They'll bump into you and act like, oh, what? I didn't do anything, but bump into them and see what happens. Um, let's see here. Police officers will, falsify police reports. If I falsify a police report, I'm going to jail, but yet they don't. When they commit battery, they don't get arrested. And they create false narratives all the time, such as we got a call of a description of your car that was in a bank robbery or something, or was prowling around the neighborhood. And it's exactly like your car, or we got a description of a man like you that was, doing something, just to, when they pull someone over, to have an excuse to start questioning them. They also will say things like, oh, I smell an odor coming from your car, like it's marijuana, or I smell alcohol on your breath, even though I may never drank a drop in my life. All they have to do is say that, and you go, or they'll say one even better, are you on any medications? Are you okay? Like if you question them, they'll start going, are you okay? Like, do we need to take you, and Baker Act you real quick here? Or I don't think it's called the Baker Act when cops do it, but act like you might be mentally unstable. And these are all tactics they use, and they know they're being sly about it. And yet, by doing that, anyone who goes through any of that goes, I'll never trust a cop again because of those tactics, because they know that they're being dishonest. And I think when you're put in that position, you want people to be honest. You want them to look up to the police and go, I can trust that person, but I know if they're being dishonest, I can't trust them. What do you think?
So I wrote a lot of those down because I want to address them. So to start off with the lie one, can you give me a scenario? Because are you saying that, because yeah, as you know, police can lie, and it's funny. I've got a couple stories, but so using what you're talking about is, you're saying that a homicide detective, um, if they have a little bit of evidence, but maybe not a lot of evidence against a homicide suspect. And listen, I know that I work both civil and criminal cases on different sides. So I've seen tactics, and I've got stories to tell you regarding those. And but you're saying that the homicide detective shouldn't have the ability to concoct a story, to
No.
uh,
Okay. So, yeah. So,
to gain a confession.
right. No. And I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying, because I get what you're talking about. And there are times where that's necessary, because you can get a confession out of somebody by telling them, what your buddy just rolled on you.
So that's lying. So that's
Right,
lying. Yeah.
right. And I understand that. What I'm talking about is the beat cop, the cops that are out on the streets who are talking to everyday citizens, who will sit there and, because they suspect somebody, and it's sort of like, and again, I don't want to bring this necessarily down to race, but if they see a black man in a white neighborhood, or a predominantly white neighborhood, and they go, oh, we got a call that, there was a black man that's, that looks just like you, with the pink shirt on and the orange shorts, that was proud, like going through someone's garage or something. So it gives them an excuse. And that's the lie that I'm talking about. So
I see what you're talking about.
regular
But,
street cops.
well, using that example, depending on where that case goes, you can prove or disprove whether they got that call. And but yeah, I think that there's probably stupid tactics that maybe not so smart police use to maybe create something, but you would hope that there's some systems in place where, and believe me, people get falsely arrested, but you need probable cause. And in certain cities, you got to go before a judge. Definitely, district attorneys are looking at the reports and the probable cause declarations and things like that. So, yeah, I think everything is situationally based. But in terms of lying, I look at it as the investigator trying to hopefully get a rightful, lawful conviction on somebody.
Right.
And I worked undercover in narcotics and vice, and um, I was purchasing a large quantity of narcotics, and the guy said, "Are you a cop?" Because I know cops can't lie, and I go, "No, I'm not." So in that scenario, yeah, I was lying and it worked, and we were able to get a lot of drugs off the street. So in terms of that getting up in the face and officer safety, like the battery thing, I've never experienced that or seen that. I think that um, in our tactics, as you know, like the beginning of the use of force continuum and command presence is to have, look sharp in your uniform and, be fit. And there's a thing called a field interview stance that they taught us in the academy, where your gun leg is back and you're kind of canted in case somebody attacks you. So I've never heard or seen, unless maybe a cop is arguing with somebody get up in the face of somebody. And I'm sure that there's idiots that will bump into somebody, I guess, but with body cams and, people, there can be a building falling down and things happening, and there's still going to be 20 people with their cell phones not caring what's going on around them because they want
Right.
that film. So I think that, some of that can get, for lack of a better term, policed. But yeah, and I think there's videos and scenarios and cases where, officers have done things. Whether I think there was one in the school where an officer hit a kid in the hallway. Well, that guy immediately gets relieved of duty, and they do the investigation and all that. So you would hope that that doesn't get taken advantage of. The falsifying reports, I agree with you. Some police are trained to just, hey, this is the template for this. You pull over somebody for DUI, and this is what you got a right to. But you would hope that um, you know that doesn't happen, and if it gets pointed out, they get nailed for it. But I've seen it where people lie in depositions, they lie in court, they lie in this, and in administrative stuff, I've seen them lie constantly, and there's no repercussions. So yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, the falsifying reports, that shouldn't be a thing. False narratives. Yeah, I think that just like a lot of industries, um, people get tunnel vision, and police get tunnel vision. So there may be somebody that says, "Hey, I saw you commit this violation." I've seen those videos where they have the dash cam, and they're like, "No, I didn't." And I think that, maybe they title it "Police Get Owned" or something like that. But I think there's false narratives in every aspect of our lives, whether it's the news or whatever. And yeah, I think, like, it goes back to the transparency. And then the "Are you okay" thing that you talked about.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that sometimes they're just grabbing at straws. And I think that obviously police are expected to, if there's a lot of burglaries, one of the number one crimes in any particular area, rich, poor, middle class, doesn't matter. Burglary is a top crime. If you want to look at your Ring app feed, next door, whatever, burglaries are up there. So police are expected to stop people. And I remember I was working nights, 3, 4 in the morning, and I see this car speeding around the neighborhood. What was the person throwing paper? So
Right.
the next night I see that car, it's not going to be suspicious for me. But if
Right.
I see another car and I run the plates and they're from, Northern California, and it's 3 in the morning, and there's been a rash of burglaries, because we get a lot of them. There's a lot of them down in Southern California, and a lot of high level ones where people's safes are getting taken, and apparently there's crews out of other countries coming in and doing them. But so we do expect the police. I do expect the police to stop people, but do it in a professional manner. And if you don't have anything, you don't have anything, and let the person go. And if they don't have a right to detain you, you've got a right to walk away. Or if they, it's pretty clear cut. And I think there's a lot of things that are coming out, whether it's in video, YouTube or TikTok or whatever. I think there's a lot of people that are trying to educate people to
Right. And I think
know their rights.
and I think you're right. And here's the thing, and I do want to make sure I make this distinction. When I talk about cops lying, I obviously am not talking about detectives or the narc division or things like that, because but the thing is that the average citizen isn't going to ever come in contact with them, because unless they've committed a major crime or something, they're never going to, run into you if you're undercover. And unless they're dealing drugs, they're never going to run into you. They're not going to run into detectives unless they've committed murder or something like that. So, or done some heinous crime. The average citizen can and will, have will have an introduction to street cops, because they're the face that we see as our police department. And for all the minor stuff that goes on, those are the people who respond. And so their behavior is what I'm talking about. And as far as how they behave in front of the community, and how we need to be able to trust them. And so when they start making stuff up, like you said, I agree. Look, if there's a rash of break-ins in a neighborhood or something, and some guy's walking around or driving around, and his tag is missing or something like that, or even if it's just out of state, or you have a right to investigate that. However, reasonable articulable suspicion says that you can ask for a person's ID, but without that, they don't have to give it to you. Now, if you do the investigation and you look in the back car and you see a crowbar and you see 6 computers and 3 TVs, then I think you have more than enough suspicion to make sure that they give you the ID. But if there's nothing amiss and you can't see it, cops will lie and say, well, you have to give me your ID no matter what. And again, and now that people are learning that, oh, I don't have to give it to you, they don't trust cops because they've been lied to. And again, it's the street cops that I think that need to be above board. And like you said, if they don't have anything, then then you don't have anything. Don't try to create something out of nothing. And I see that happen too often.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I think, but I mean, you would hope that the officer has good intentions, and like you said, they have a right to stop. Um, and as a citizen, I would want them to stop.
Right.
I handled a case where this person was being threatened, and there was arson involved in shooting. The suspect ended up shooting at the house, so we were doing surveillance, and we utilized the police because, obviously we were armed, but we don't know what the suspect's going to do, and so they came. Every car that we saw, suspicious car that we saw, I had them stop it because the stakes were raised. This guy had done multiple shootings on their relatives' house, arson, all this stuff, and it was a neighborhood where we knew what car belonged to what person, and so they responded based on my observations as a citizen reporting it. And one particular guy, I think he had too much to drink, and he pulled over and turned off his lights. Unfortunately, he did it right in front of my client's house, and so the police came in 2 minutes and they got him home safely. But uh, there's certain circumstances that maybe the public aren't aware of behind the scenes, like you talked about, where you see Mr. and Mrs. Jones and you wave and you think everything's fine and dandy, whereas I'm watching this house because this guy wants to commit murder against these 5 people.
Right. Well, we're going to go do one more question on this, and then we're going to go into the happy stuff. How's that sound?
Whatever you want.
So let's talk. You talked about it briefly just earlier about the First Amendment auditors, and that you thought it was necessary, and I do too. I think there's some good work being done out there that's not just educating the public, but educating police officers too. To say, hey, you don't have the right to do these things, and even though the cops will sit there and adamantly say yes we do, and then they find out later, oh, they don't, because they'll have a supervisor come out and go, yeah, you can't do that. So, and I think that they serve a good purpose. But on the other hand, there are some First Amendment auditors out there who I just think they just hate cops, and it doesn't matter how good a job the police do, they're going to be disrespectful in every way that they can just because they can. And I think they hurt that whole movement of of educating people. I think that they're just, looking for sensationalism and views and stuff just to, to get a rise out of people. And I think that they hurt that whole movement.
Yeah, and I think there's that fine line, just like we talked about, officers stopping people in neighborhoods or something. But I think there's that fine line when they talk about defunding, and now they're doing, First Amendment auditors. And I think the education is great as long as it's accurate and valid and all of it. And I think that, like you said, officers need to know the law. I don't know, why officers that you're talking about don't know the law. I think laws are constantly changing. Uh, some things are getting kicked down to misdemeanors, things like that. So I think that, yeah, I think that education of the law for officers, and then tactics and community relations and customer service. But then also, I don't, you gotta understand that, if you've got a street near your house in a neighborhood, and people are going 90 miles an hour and there's kids, I want motor officers to stop people. I want that street to be safe for the kids. So why are you going to beat down, the people that do that? And
Right.
so I think it needs to be done in a professional manner. And I think that, getting back to what I was talking about before in terms of, officer involved shootings, that those videos are done in a very professional manner, and are done right. And it's all about the transparency. So yeah, I think you've got those rogue people that are trying to trap an officer maybe that doesn't have a lot of knowledge, and trying to put him or her in a situation. I mean, there are some legitimate things that I've seen where I'm like, man, because it turns into the contempt of cop. And where you're the person's only human, and then there's going, it's just that ego battle. But you still need to call somebody when stuff happens. So
Exactly. And I think that, that's key. Is like what you stated this earlier. Look, if you're in a situation as a police officer, and things are getting heated, and you're getting heated, it's time to call somebody in and let them take over before you end up blowing a gasket and regretting, your next few moves. So I think
you're right.
that would help a lot. So I'm really, thank you. I can't thank you enough, Eric, about going over these things, because I know these are concerns that a lot of people have, and I'm glad that we addressed them. But now I want to move on to a happier note. And so let's talk about, like, all right, so you're a cop for 20 years, and then did you retire? Or did you just decide, hey, I've had enough of this and I'm dealing with the public, and so I'm going to become a PI? Or what made you transition to becoming a private investigator?
It was an easy transition. I got an opportunity in 2013, and all along my career in LAPD, I did executive protection, and so
Hmm.
that was something, because that was something to supplement my income. And then the majority of my career, I worked investigations, and I had a great opportunity to go on with a company, and then was forming my own investigative company while I was working that. It was a company out of Texas, and so um, yeah, I always loved investigations. My dad spent the majority of his career in investigations, and homicide, and he was actually in charge of investigations. That was his last assignment. But um, so yeah, I love it, and every day is different, and I get rewarded, um, you know, by my clients, just for helping them fix their chaotic mess in their life that, um, you know, no nobody else could have helped them with. And so it's pretty amazing.
So would you say that that being a private investigator, the pros are you don't have to deal with the public, and people actually appreciate you? So
Yeah.
bigger level.
I still, I, so I have to deal with yeah. And what's interesting is I'm getting a lot of calls because people aren't happy with the response time for the police. And I used to work detectives in South LA. It was San Pedro, Wilmington area. And it was me and another detective. And I was an officer. I only had like maybe 3 years on the job. And it was an opportunity that came up because 3 to 4 years. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, about 3 years. It was an opportunity that came up because I wanted to go back to school to finish my degree. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. And so it was a gang detective. So we had, our desk was filled with 3-ring binders. And I think we had a computer to share between 2 or 3 of us. And it was funny that one of the chief at the time was doing like a tour of the station, and my partner was a detective and very grumpy. And he said, and the chief says, hey, how's everything going here? He goes, well, we don't have any computers. So we have to share computers. So our work is slowed down because of that. And so the next week we ended up having computers. But so the reason I tell that story is I had, 3 huge 3-ring binders full of cases. So it's just continuous. And basically we would handle all the gang and hate crimes in that particular area. And it was just the 2 of us. And I was learning, but you learn quick on the job there. And so I understand the caseload. So now I'm getting calls from citizens that, whether they're CEOs of businesses or victims of burglaries or whatever, and they're victims of crimes. So essentially I'm handling the crime for them and handing it to the detective and packaging it up. I got a confession last week, 2 weeks ago, on a theft, $80,000 theft, employee theft. And he admitted to everything, and he allowed me to record it. I have that on recorder, and I have a report I signed, and everything will get sent to the DA's office, and the detective didn't really have to do anything other than facilitate that.
So how's your relationship now as a private eye with the police department or the detectives, if you will? Like, do you find them appreciative of what you do, or do they think that you're stepping on their toes sometimes, or how's that relationship? Is it like you have to walk on eggshells, or what's it like?
No, it's very good. So I can think I've got 3 that I've handled recently. One was in LAPD, the other 2 were in Orange County. And the LAPD person wants to take me out to lunch, and she actually worked in the same division I was at the same time. So I may recognize her by face, but basically I found the suspect's associates who he was hanging out with, and then a potential suspect vehicle in less than a day. And her caseload is crazy, and the DA's caseload is crazy. So it's nothing against them, because and then court, you got to go to court and sit there. I loved court when I was going to school because it was such a waste of time. I couldn't be at the office. I'd have to be at court, and then you're sitting there all day. So I would do my homework. And, it's not that efficient, the systems that are in place, as you probably know.
Right.
Government system. So I'm able to cut through some of the red tape, and I work I can work 24/7, and I'm beholden to the client. And so if I don't hit a home run or do a good job, then perhaps they're good. I mean, they can write a review or do whatever. Whereas, the police have a big caseload. So to answer your question, the first thing that I tell the client is, I don't want to step on the officer or the detective's toes. And then I say, can you please connect me to them via email or give me their number? And that's the first thing I tell them. I say, listen, I've done your job. I'm not here to step on your toes. I'm here to help you. This is what the client wants to do. Are you good with that? And typically they'll give me their cell phone numbers, where they're not going to give the victim a cell phone number because they don't want calls every day from them.
Right.
And I'll say, hey, I've done this, this, and this. Here's all the info, and they'll appreciate it. This one particular case spanned 3 different counties and then went into Mexico. And so I was able to coordinate, just put all the information together. And that report was used to help one of the county's cases, one of the cities in one of the county's cases. So it's a good thing. If I had somebody like me helping me out, I would have cleared a lot more cases.
All right. So I know you're not a bounty hunter, but have you ever thought about going out and like these guys who have bounties on their head and going, oh, I bet I could find it and go collect that reward?
So I have worked fugitives. That was one of the assignments I did at LAPD. So we would go across the country after somebody got arrested, bring them back on a plane, or we would find them locally. And it's different nowadays. I do have a guy that I use for surveillance that has done that work, and he's been in multiple shootings. And so I can find people, but just like the case that I described where there was arson and shooting, you want to outsmart the person because you don't know how they're going to react. So the one particular shooting that the guy that I use was involved in, the guys just started shooting him from the inside of his house, and they got him, and he survived. But I would like to. I like surveillance and that type of work and tracking people down, especially really bad people. But when you don't have like the military equipment we talked about earlier, it's a little bit difficult. So it'd be great to formulate a plan, which is what we did on that other case, and the police were able to safely apprehend this guy on their terms and when he least expected it.
So is there any reward for that guy, and would you get the
No,
reward if there were?
no. Well, so no, there wasn't, because it's still an ongoing case, but they had something else to arrest him on. So yeah, no reward. I mean, that's interesting stuff. I don't know if you saw when Dog the Bounty Hunter was going after the guy that that did camping with his girlfriend, and he was on the news about that. He made some statements. He was in the swamp in Florida.
Yeah, I remember him being on the news, but I didn't read the article, so I wasn't. I'm not.
Yeah. So I mean, I like those cases. I like tracking down people. I like the surveillance. I like the that aspect. But I think when it comes to the level of violence that people are willing to do these days, it's good to have a plan, because I'd like to go home at night.
Right. Exactly. All right. So one of the things I think that most people don't understand, because they grow up watching PI shows or cop shows, and and of course when you're doing a television show, you're not going to show a private investigator sitting in his car for 12 hours doing surveillance, because that's not very exciting. You just show the exciting parts. So as a private investigator, how much of your time, like 90%, 95%, do you think is boring, where you had that 5% of excitement or 10% excitement, or what do you think the average is?
I would say it's not the excitement and the adrenaline rush that I used to get, in pursuits or certain situations in law enforcement. But there is different levels and different situations. But I do get excited about certain cases that are, maybe groundbreaking in terms of crimes or scams, or putting the pieces of a puzzle together or trying to track somebody down. And so that gets me excited, as opposed to, the craziness of 100-mile pursuit on the freeway. So it could be 50-50, because there are things that come across. I never know what that next call is going to be. So there are things that really pique my interest in terms of what somebody's doing and how I could get them, doing what they're doing, and put a case together. So it's there's a constant thoughts in my head at night or in the morning, of how I can approach certain things. So that gets me going.
So, okay, so I know your father is a police officer, and you have other family members who are police officers as well. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you come from a family of people who served different departments and stuff. And so I'm sure that was an influence. But as a kid, did you catch yourself watching, police shows or private investigation shows back in the day, like Magnum PI or Hill Street Blues or any of those things? Or
So we did have Hill Street Blues. I remember watching that. Miami Vice. Magnum PI. Yeah, I thought that was cool. I don't to be honest with you, I don't really remember the types of cases that he handled. I do remember that there was the helicopter with TC and he had a
Right.
cool Ferrari, but I don't remember like the cases. Um, there weren't too many PI shows. I think there's some out. There's been some, in the past 5+ years or something, and um, we would watch cops on.
Right.
There's cops would be on Saturdays. There was a show called LAPD, Life on the Beat. I think I was on one of those, but I think it was the Spanish version. Placas. Um, yeah, there's a lot. But then once you get into the field, you don't really watch that anymore.
Right.
You,
Because
you
it's
just like,
not, yeah, it's not reality. You go, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that would never happen. That would never
Mhm.
happen. And that would never happen. So,
And there's no more. I mean, I don't think Cops is still on, but people can just go to YouTube and see Cops like
right.
we talked about earlier. There's always something on regarding police stuff or crazy crime stuff. But yeah,
I don't know if you remember because you might be a little too young, but there used to be shows on back in the 60s like Cannon. And Cannon was his PI, and it was his name was Frank Cannon. He was a fat guy, and he used to drive around a Lincoln Continental. and and then Mannix, and there were several of them. And then of course later on, you had things like Spencer for Hire, which I
yeah,
love. I
yeah. I
love.
remember watching that,
And
the
then
original Equalizer.
yep, the Equalizer. And do you know who because you're, for being a police officer for 20 years and being a private investigator, I find your personality to be very laid back, like something I'm not used to. And so I was thinking, if I could think of a private investigator, who would I consider you to be like? And it's almost like you'd be Columbo. You're very like thinking
Mhm.
about everything and just,
Yeah.
and just relaxed. And so, I just found it kind of strange that, all the police officers and detectives I've known over the years, you're the most relaxed I've ever seen.
Well, I appreciate that, and you got to be. I mean, nothing really with the situations that I deal with. The common thing that I get when somebody calls me, I've never called a private investigator. I've never done this before. And I said, no problem. Just explain your situation to me. And I got a comment recently from a client that said, I talked to the police. So basically, this particular, it's a husband and wife. Their daughter in her early 20s, and I've seen an uptick in some of these types of things where the daughter is going out with a guy that they really don't know who it is. They want to find out what he's about, and she's kind of cut off communication with the parents. So this is at the beginning stages of the case, and they said, we talked to the police, and the police called her and said that she was okay, but the police said, well, maybe you're too overly protective as a parent, or they started making some stupid opinions to my client, trying to, I don't know what they were trying to do, but this particular officer trying to advise them how to be a parent, and she was really offended by that, and really offended by the lack of customer service and communication, or proper communication, from the police department. And she said, you're very calm, and we really like how you handle things, and because if you think about it, whether this is probably one of the most significant things that these people are going to experience, whether it's something like this that could be potentially criminal, or their daughter took out, I think, 12 grand out of their bank account. That's not unlike her, so potentially she's being scammed. And so I'm going to go down and track down this guy, because apparently she's staying with him, and get to the bottom of it and find out who he is. And so when I'm dealing with people, and whether it's crazy civil law, family law, criminal, you can't be a spaz. And then the situations that I'm sure you dealt with as an MP, or and that I've dealt with in LA, if you're out of sorts and you're all over the map, and you can't handle, and you can't be calm in those situations, what good are you?
Right. Exactly. And you're not.
But I appreciate that. I've gotten that before, where people have said, man, you don't strike me as a cop,
Yeah.
until they see me control the situation.
Right. is there a part of your job description that people would be shocked to find out? Like, is there something that a PI does that people really don't? They go, oh, I would never expect that PIs do this. Or do you think that they have a good grasp of everything that you do?
I think they have a good grasp. I think that, the old school philosophy was, um, like the Magnum PI, or, somebody
Right.
like the old school PI sitting in a desk, and a gal comes in and says, "Hey, my husband's doing this." And, I think that it's evolved, things evolve. And I think that, we're at a point with technology. So in other words, I get calls a lot, whether maybe people don't know this, but we do debugging, polygraph. We analyze phones for spyware. We, will help people with cyber stuff that are getting attacked. So we've got a whole cyber unit. And so, I think that maybe they just don't realize it, and then they'll just start researching, and then hopefully either see a review or see something that I've posted to know that, okay, he can handle that. So I think, you know, in the past, people's minds were narrow on, what PIs do, maybe just cheating spouses, as opposed to, well, we solve problems, and now I'm doing the police department's work for them.
Do you have a hilarious like story to tell as a PI, that something that happened that you go, if I wasn't part of this, I would never believe this would happen. Like, this is something that would you'd see on TV that would be made up, but you actually went through it.
Um, wow. I'm sure there's a lot, but one that comes to mind is, and I think I've only seen maybe an episode or a couple of snippets of this, but there's a show called Cheaters.
Oh yeah.
And so I had a client that, and some of the situations I deal with are delicate. So the communication that I have with them is, whatever information I'm giving you, a lot of times it's used for court and things like that. But this particular guy confronted his wife and a guy in the back seat of the car in broad daylight in a bank parking lot, and started filming and pulled him out. And I think the wife was in her panties and stuff. So it was like a whole scene. And I told him before, I go, if you confront these people, if you no violence, no crime, no nothing, or all bets are off, I'll turn you in. And so,
Right.
yeah, so it was, so those crazy scenarios, we had to legally take a dog from a woman, family law case, guy's up north, she's down in Orange County, and she took all the property and just did a bunch of crazy stuff and ignored attorney's request in the court. And so they had a court order to take the dog. So I have a video camera that I could attach to it's like a small camera to a baseball cap, and we legally, she wouldn't have given it up, so we had to pet the dog and walk the dog to the client's car, and she attacked us, and so we got it on video. The lady that I use, she's a black belt in, I think, Kenpo karate, and I said, don't hit her, let's just go. And of course the police, I called the police prior to see if they had a unit that could stand by there or be there. And of course they didn't have any units available, which is fine. But of course they called me and they said, hey, was that you on 17th Street? I said, yep. I go, no problem. So yeah, because she called and reported us. So, but yeah, there's just constant craziness when you involve unique situations with people.
Yeah, I can only imagine. People will never cease to amaze me and surprise me at the things that they're capable of doing in situations, and just when they let their emotions get the best of them and they don't take that 1 second to think about what they're doing. And it's funny that you brought up Cheaters, because I think the guy who hosted that show, if I remember correctly, and I thought about this because I used to watch the show, and I thought, one day someone's going to beat the tar out of this guy. And he actually ended up getting stabbed. He didn't die or anything, but he got stabbed because, he starts questioning a guy like, you feel good about yourself? This guy had just had it with him. And
Yeah,
it's like, well, you got to be careful. And I think that's when the show ended, was off of that.
I can imagine. I mean, it was so volatile.
Yeah.
Those things are so volatile. Like you said, you never know how people are going to be, and so many things could be prevented if people were as calm as us, or communicated better, or there was better customer service, or something. There was no, people just hang on things, and then there are people that will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in family law court just to make a point, and attorneys are right there sitting back laughing to the
Yep.
bank, all the way to the bank.
Exactly.
So I mean, so many things could get prevented, whether, like we talked about, in the law enforcement sector or in the civil court sector, because they just need to get over that particular thing. And it's just nuts. I mean, there are certain states, California is not one of them, where you're at fault for the divorce, and it could affect the divorce proceeding if you do cheat. I think one's Minnesota, or something like that. But by and large, I believe most states, it's just like a no fault state. But that show, people have referenced that show. Hey, have you seen that? Because that's a topic. And there's a radio station out here that will order, like they'll try to trap a guy to have him send flowers to a lady. And then Ryan Seacrest will confront the person on the air. It's called Ryan's Roses. And so, and it's interesting. I think it's every week they do a couple. And so, yeah, it's just nuts. So many crazy situations. And I don't really like to do those types of cases, but we get calls on them, and I'll have surveillance teams help out. But yeah, it's funny.
The funniest one I ever saw in Cheaters was this big black lady, and they caught her husband cheating on her, and she took her shoe off, and she was chasing him around, hitting him on the head, chasing into the men's bathroom, and she did not care. She was going to beat that man.
Yeah.
But again, it's just like you said, it's like, it's they just let the emotions get the best of them. If they would just think about things and how to handle these things properly, it would go much smoother. And I know that's easy to say when you're not the one caught up in,
you're right,
into the event itself, but
yeah.
So
it's nuts.
I want to thank you for taking the time and answering all these questions, because I know a lot of people had a lot of questions about these topics, and as far as the police go, and what it's like to be an investigator. Now, the name of your investigation company is Peterson's Investigations, right?
So Peterson, Peterson Investigations, yeah, plural. And we're in Southern California.
You're in Southern California. Do you have a website or any way that people could contact you who would like your services?
Yeah, PetersonInvestigations.com. And I can send you all the stuff, all the links to everything.
Yeah, that'd be great. And we'll place those links down below on both our podcast and our YouTube channel, so that if anybody in the Southern California region or needs your services, they know where to find you. So
I appreciate that.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate your time, and it's been fun talking with you, and enlightening as well. So thank you again.
Likewise. Yeah, no problem.
All right. Well, folks, thanks for joining us, and again, thanks to Eric for being a guest on the show and being a wonderful guest. And until next time, take care, be safe, and love yourself so you can love others. Bye.